Welcome everybody to our second Mindshare HTA webinar of the year using HTA tools to battle a downturn. We have Pat Mulligan and Juan Pablo Garcia-Neveu of Pacific Audio and Communications, zooming in from Hawaii. And in a 6-hour time difference, we have JW Anderson of the Integrated Home in North Carolina. Pacific Audio and Communications has been in business for 32 years, so they weathered downturns in the past. And also, the Integrated Home has been in business for 15 years. As many of you know, we launched the HTA Design Partner Program here, which will come into our discussion a little bit, but this is about 55% of HTA integrators have opted into this program, a program that's a lot of research went into to help get you, HTA certified integrators, hired to projects from architects, designers, builders much earlier in their process, and flipping the table on them to get them to understand how to work with you in a better way. So it's a great rules of engagement to make sure you're on projects earlier. So now I'd like to turn the virtual keys over to Eric Thies, who's going to kick us off.
Hey, everybody. Okay, so let's kind of recap. Where are we now? Where have we been in the past 2.5 years? Well, the past 2.5 years, we've experienced something like I've never experienced in the 30 years I've been doing this, right? And that is where the demand for our services exceeded the supply by quite a bit. So we were all crazy busy for the past 2.5 years. One, handling all the sort of deferred maintenance that clients have had on their homes. They were finally stuck home. They weren't going on vacations. They realized their networks were no good. They wanted to upgrade their TVs, their theaters, whatever. So we had that huge influx of business. Plus, they were moving. They were building their vacation homes, their zombie apocalypse bunkers, and things like that. So huge surge in business, crazy, like we've never seen before. And what that did for us was one, we stopped selling. We were more order taking than selling. And we'd sell clients. We didn't have to sell too hard to get them in the door and do business with us, but we had to sell them in the project, to get better stuff, of course. But we're going to go back, right? So we're going to go back to pre-pandemic levels, which were still good, right? 2019, 2018, 2017. You're going to see those levels. What I'm seeing now is that the middle market is eroding. So those doctors and lawyers who had all this expendable income, that's tightening up quite a bit. I see our reps have all lowered their kind of sales expectations. Most of the TV manufacturers have lowered their sales expectations. Most of our clients have got hammered in the market. If they're in crypto, they got slaughtered. So yeah, we're going to see a correction in the market for sure. We know that's coming, but how do we deal with it, right? And how do we get off we've been a little lazy in terms of sales, in terms of business development and events and CEUs and all this stuff. And we haven't really been worried about competition or price pressure for the past 2.5 years. So all that's going to change. So, this is what we're going to talk about, how we can get HTA to help us get through this. Also, what you're going to see is, like, I don't know if those of you who have service departments, you're going to see that revenue decline a bit because of the deferred maintenance thing as well. So the other big threat caused by this economic situation is most of us are operating at the higher level of the marketplace, and the guys that were nipping at our heels in 2019 disappeared because they were so busy. They're installing all their Sonos gear and their Snap AV products and whatever. They were super tied up. So we didn't have them knocking on our job site trailers. They weren't, throwing in bids that were way below market because they were too busy to come chase after our projects. But now all of their business is drying up, and now they're going to sort of enter into our space again, and they're going to be disruptive for sure with pricing. So that this is the climate we're sitting in. Our good news is that we probably are all sitting on a lot of backlog that we sold in the year before. So this year is probably going to be pretty good for us. It's really filling the pipeline for 24 and 25 that we got to worry about, and then maybe supplanting a bit of our revenue we might lose from ongoing service, because we handle a lot of that deferred maintenance. So let's start off by, what I use and how I'm successful with my HTA tools, and what really works for me in handling these types of situations. So one thing I'll talk about is just recently happened, a competitive bidding situation. So I'm in a competitive bidding situation. There's 3 other guys involved. I brought in by the builder, a construction manager brought in his favorite guy, the client brought in a guy, and the interior designer brought in a guy. And so go out of the gate, my best chance was 25% to win that project. Really, since there was an incumbent, the client's guy, I probably was more like down to 10% shot of getting this job. And the job was worth about $750,000. It was a big, juicy job that I wanted very much. So, what do we do in this situation, right? How can we use HTA tools? Well, the first thing I did, I was go to the builder. I said, Mr. Builder, you brought me in this job because you want me on this job. How do you feel about having to deal with that client's guy for the next 3 years? And the builder said, oh, he's not good. I don't want to work with that guy. I'm okay working with you. I'm okay working with the guy that the construction manager brought in. I know he's good. I don't know this interior designer guys. I don't know them, so I'm a little uncomfortable. I said, well, why don't you just plant your flag and say you only really want to work with HTA certified firms? And of course, he was like, what's HTA certified firm mean? I was like, okay, well, I didn't do my job of talking about this with you the last time we worked together. So let me educate you on what HTA certification is. And I did the quick 30-second pitch. It's the Michelin stars. It's a 5-star safety rating. We've been vetted. 9 to 12 people have references, and all the spiel about HTA. And he's like, oh yeah, awesome. Of course. Why wouldn't I want to work with an HTA person? Yes, absolutely. So what I would suggest to you, Mr. Builder, is say, hey, we really prefer that the firms we work with are HTA certified. Your guy that you've been working with for the past 2 years, I'm sure he's wonderful at installing the systems you did in your old home, which weren't very complicated. This is kind of a different animal. This is a big 20,000 square foot house. We'd really like it to be an HTA certified firm, which brought it from the 4 down to 2, which was me and the construction managers guys. So what I did was I effectively, by bringing up HTA, I raised my percentage of winning this job from 10% to 50%. Huge. The client felt like, oh, I kind of really owe this guy a favor, so I'm still going to let my guy bid, but I'll just tell him he didn't win the job, blah, blah, blah. The interior decorators guy was eliminated. So anyway, at the end of the day, we got the job, right? And it was only because I could leverage it and I gave the builder an excuse to push out somebody else from the bid. Another thing that happened to me this year that was super helpful, and I can't take credit for you, I was just the recipient of this, was I got a bid for a project in LA, biggest bid spec I've ever seen. I think it was $8 or $9 million all in when we did the math. Video walls all over the place, crazy distributed audio system with high performance speakers and 40 rooms, a $2 million theater. It was a ridiculous bid. The first qualification for the bidder list was bidder must be HTA certified. Boom. Okay. So the reason I got this call about this was because the builder who was dealing with the bids didn't know what any of the stuff was. And in addition to that, it was like, had to be Crestron, a certain level of Crestron dealer, blah, blah, blah. There was about 4 or 5, but HTA was at the top of the list. The first thing he did was figure out who he knows that's HTA certified. Their 3 favorites were not. So those guys got eliminated and they wound up calling us only because of that. So I urge you that if you are doing a bid spec and you want to narrow the competition and keep it only to companies that can perform the work, which you're taking a lot of people off the plate. All the builders' favorite subs, all the ones that, the guys that did the builder a favor by putting a system in his house, all those guys were eliminated. So it was, it was more of a fair playing field now. And I got this invite for this massive job that I never would have gotten otherwise. So if you're doing a bid spec, put that as a requirement, as a bidder requirement. HTA certified. Must be HTA certified at whatever level you're working at, right? Luxury estate, because you're going to take that. In our case in LA, I think we've got about 17 or 18 HTA certified companies. My local SNAP has 1,700 dealer accounts. So if I can reduce my playing field from 1,700 down to 17, and then even further by going to whatever level I'm at, maybe that becomes 6 or 7. It's huge. It's incredible. So those are 2 examples of how HTA helped me and how you can use it. So add it to your bid specs for 1, and 2, educate your builders and architects. And like you, I'm guilty of forgetting to do this. Remind them that they have a tool to keep you in the mix or to push out somebody. Those are big things. So anyway, I've been prattling on for far too long. Let's talk to one of our panelists here. Who do we want to talk to? JW. Hey, buddy.
How's it going?
What else should HTA dealers be using to deal with all these competitors, the walking dead that are going to come up and undercut us and tell us they can do everything we can do and present a bid that looks almost identical to our bid in terms of all the gear they're using? How do we convince them we're better?
Yeah, well, I have a unique story. It's from a little bit of a different angle, but about 13 years ago, we were working with a client who was a very, very difficult client. And his builder was probably one of the best builders in Charlotte, one of the handful of the best builders in the region. And great project, not a lot of client contact during the project. We were working with third-party people, which happens a lot. And we get the system in, and the client was being very difficult about some of the things that were selected by his people and all that. And we had a very difficult conversation on New Year's Day 13 years ago. And I made a short-sighted decision not to say how high when he said jump, to send people out on a holiday for absolutely no reason. I was in the right, but what it did is it hurt that builder relationship. And so for the next 11 years, we didn't work with that builder, and that was very hurtful to me. Something I thought about constantly. Never would get an opportunity with them. And then about 2 years ago, we had a client come in looking for a golf simulator. And they were talking about the golf simulator. We got to talking about his project, and it turned out he was building a very large home on a great golf course here in Charlotte. And the builder was the same builder that we kind of burned the bridge with 11 years ago. And so I got to talking about HTA to the client, and pitching the fact that it is an objective measure of companies, that it's not tied to any particular builder or any particular thing, and leveraged HTA as a way for him to be able to look at all the different companies that he was getting bids from through that builder, in order to get him to allow us to bid his project in addition to the golf simulator. And so he agreed to do that. And none of the other companies that were bidding that project were HTA certified. So ultimately, we won out on that, and it went from being a golf simulator project to a $500,000 AV project beyond the golf simulator. Funny enough, we ended up not installing the golf simulator. It turned into he ended up going somewhere else, doing something else with the golf simulator. But we did the project, and what it allowed us to do was spend time with that builder again and recreate that relationship and talk about all those old difficult conversations. And lo and behold, now that builder is sending us bids again, to be involved in their projects. And so had we not been able to leverage HTA and use a completely objective measurement for that, the builder's feeling about us would have been clouded by, the client would have been clouded by the builder's feeling of something that happened, 11 years ago. Right. And it allowed us to kind of wade through that process. And so less about comparing against people that weren't necessarily good at what they do, but it gave us an opportunity again to get in front of somebody that bridge had been burned a long time ago, which was very exciting.
And what do you think the value of that builder relationship is to your company?
Well, I mean, the projects that they're doing, Charlotte is not a massive market. It's not like LA. But if there's a big time project, there's probably 3, maybe 4 builders that are bidding on it. And routinely, this particular builder over the last decade would get, 30, 40% of those projects, and then that would close us out in terms of being able to work on them. Well, now it gives us the opportunity to be able to say, it doesn't really matter which builder you ultimately work with. We are aligned with all of them now. And it gives us a higher, opportunity to get those projects, which, it's hard to put a number on that because the opportunities now are so much greater than what they were before.
Nice. Okay.
Oh, lost you, Eric.
You're muted, Eric.
Sorry, I did the reverse. Instead of unmuting, I muted myself. So it's clear that in order to take, we're going to have this decline in revenue. Our industry partners are going to have less jobs to bid on. So that means we need to either close more or bring some more opportunities in. So Pat, let's hit you up and say, how are you going to replace this revenue that's going to be potentially lost? How are you going to use HTA to help you?
Well, something that both you and Josh had mentioned earlier was education, right? Not a lot of people know about HTA, which is partly our fault for not getting in front of the design build community. But I'm going to take that a step farther, right? People say, I'll think outside of the box. Well, at this point, screw the box. I'm going to think outside the pyramid, right? Outside of the triangle. And let's start looking at other industries that affect our industry, right? And what I mean by that is we're seeing a lot of property managers have some pull now, especially, again, being here in Hawaii. You've got clients that are here for 2, 3, 4 months out of the year, if not less. They need somebody to caretake their homes. Property managers are super important. Real estate people, agents as well, again, are not really tied to our industry, but they're still part of that. They're sometimes the first people, other than the banks, that would see a project coming to play, even before the architects probably. So what we started doing, Juan and I and the rest of the team here in Hawaii, and Juan and I held a COI or CDS outreach instructor event last year, which tied into some of this HTA items. But we started thinking outside of the pyramid, going, why aren't we reaching out to real estate? Why aren't we reaching out to insurance companies even, right? At least for the state of Hawaii, a lot of insurance companies now on new builds are requiring water cop or sensors, right? So these are other touch points that we can get to that I don't think anybody's really concentrated on. Insurance companies, real estate, banking, get with the top bankings. Not all of our clients use those kind of finances, but it's not a bad way to at least get them educated in what those things look like. So again, thinking outside of the box, thinking outside of the pyramid, looking at other industries that still interface with our industry that might be something different in a downturn, a little bit different avenue to start looking at. So creating the designer tools that you guys have and even bringing in the CD outreach instructor. Some of those guys don't need CEUs, but they want to get the education, which is what we're talking about. Bringing up HTA, bringing up those tools to these guys, letting them know that, hey, not only is there a budget calculator, but there's a bunch of newsletters and stuff that we can, add into our monthly newsletters and blogs that, HTA supplies. A lot of these tools are already in play. We just need to use them, and we need to educate, as I said, educate our outside of the industry partners. And I think that's going to push a lot of us through this next downturn, is looking at these other industries that are tied to us.
I'm gonna add a couple things to your list that maybe you're not thinking of. Is one, construction managers. There's a lot of people that, construction management firms, they act as owners reps, they wrangle the architects, interior designers, and builders. That's a great source of work. They typically only work on higher end projects, and not every market has them, but if they have them, they're super valuable, because a lot of the times, what I say to those people is like, hey, you want to save yourself some money, or your clients some money, and show your value to them, is you hire us, right? You bring us in, as opposed to the builder bringing us in and adding 10% or whatever they add on to it. And it's now sort of a common practice in Los Angeles, where construction manager is the one that hires a technology company. We get a lot of business from them. If you have very high net worth clients, typically they'll have a business manager or a family office, and getting connected up with some of these family offices, and they all talk to each other. The family offices from one billionaire talk to the next one.
Yep.
It's a terrific source of work. But one thing I want to bring up as I as I meet new people, and for 2.5 years, I really haven't made a lot of effort to meet new people and do much business development at all. But now I'm going to get out there. I'm going to start kissing babies again, and go on the campaign trail. And I'm going to use the same pitch that I really use to my clients to educate them about HTA, which is a little bit different than the elevator pitch. So here's my sort of take on it that I'll share with you. One, I want to create a problem, right, for the client. Here's the problem that you got to solve, and then I'm going to give them the solution. And so the problem is that it's really easy to hire the wrong person for your project. There's 15,000 companies in our industry, maybe up to 20,000. Unfortunately, most of them are not great. Most of them don't have the capabilities or talent to pull off a project of your scope and size. So it's really easy to hire the wrong company. And that's demonstrated by the fact that I'm sure you have a friend or somebody that's had a terrible technology experience. And they will all respond with, yes, of course. I know, of course. My brother, my uncle, my business partner, whatever, hates his house, hates his tech, right? So boom, you've established it. Then I say, well, it's, a lot of people think that they just picked the wrong brands. They agonize about Lutron or Control 4 or Crestron or whatever. And I say, it's never the brand. We do these takeover projects. We get called in probably a dozen times a month to take over a system where the client's super unhappy. And 100% of the time when we walk in this house, it's never, ever the gear. It's always the person who installed it. Okay, so now you've established the problem. One, oh boy, I don't want to align with a company that's bad, give my client bad experiences, or as a consumer, I don't want to hire a company. It's easy to hire the wrong company. Oh my God, how do I make sure I hire the right company? Okay, boom, there's your introduction. Say, okay, well, for our industry, our 5-star safety rating, our Michelin stars is certification by Home Technology Association. So if you're not hiring me for this project, and you want to make sure you're hiring a good company, just hire somebody off that list, right? And for your particular project, it's whatever level, let's say it's a state level. Now, make sure you hire someone that has that category, right? Because that's the right one for your project. So now you've taken your huge list of competitors, you've whittled it down to a handful, and you've also established that you're a great company because you passed the certification, you've got your Michelin star from industry. You don't even have to go too deep into it. Just the fact that this thing exists, that's the standard. Of course, they don't know what the standard is in our industry. They don't know about our industry. You've established what the standard is. You've made the easy button for them. Choose an HTA certified guy, if not me, somebody else. Boom. They're a lot less likely to start shopping around now because you've established the fact. You've planted your flag. You've said, I'm one of the best in the country. Hire one like me, or else your job could be in peril. So anyway, that's my elevator.
I wanted to pick up on that, the elevator pitch. So Eric was sharing his elevator pitch there, and we've already seen from the discussion thus far, especially talking to JW, it even helped kind of repair a relationship that went a little sideways in the past. Make sure that you're using that elevator pitch, because we have it. If HTA dealers, it's part of your assets link, and I'll put that in the chat if you forgot it, or I'll just put a link right to the HTA elevator pitch. It's just a suggested one. I'd like to hear JW's and how Pat and Juan Pablo use it, because I know that they are using it. This is a key thing. Kind of a 30,000 foot view of saying the success of using HTA. You're already successful companies out there if you're HTA certified, and you have your own routine, right? You have your own habit of selling. And this is one of those little challenges, a little tweak. You have to make a little tweak to your process to take advantage of the HTA tools available to you. The elevator pitch, few sentences, couple seconds, completely changes it. Like you've heard, you're whittling down 15, 20,000 integrators and down to less than 5%, right? So you could get rid of those crummy competitors really quick without telling them they stink and we're great. HTA elevator pitch does that. And then I wanted to share to back that up, right? I want to share a page on our site, which you probably know, but reorient yourself to it. So this is the homepage of HTA. There is this link here, HTA certification defined. If you click it and you send this link to your builder, to your architect, interior designer, kitchen bath designer, your client, prospective client, and they read what this is, it's common sense, right? There's nothing in here like must cure the blind, walk on water. I mean, this is all common sense stuff that they'd want of any professional they put in their house. So use this. If you send them this and say, we meet the standard, why don't the others? Then you just completely narrowed that list down and made it so they're going to shop around less. So on that thing, JW, you use a slightly modified version of the elevator pitch. What do you do?
Eric kind of touched on one of the situations where I use the elevator pitch, and it's when you're sitting in front of a client who's had a previous bad experience. So there are 3 HTA certified integrators in Charlotte, and all 3 of us, the other 2 that we very seldom compete against each other, and they're fantastic companies. And I normally will use the elevator pitch in that situation and say, hey, this, again, objectivity, like this is an objective way. Each one of us, if anyone sits down with you and says, oh yes, I know you had a bad experience, but we're different. Of course I'm going to say that. I'm selling you a system. But it's a way to be able to show someone like there's an objective way to be able to determine which companies give you the higher likelihood of success with your next system. And so I use it in that situation. And then I also use it in the sales process, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit later with the calculator. But the bigger thing is that I don't push the elevator pitch aggressively. I don't, say to a builder, you should only have HTA firms involved. I try to use it as, wouldn't you want someone to objectively vet the companies that you're working with to make sure that they're not going to leave you in a bad position? And this is a good way to do it. And so that I kind of approach it from a little bit of a different angle, but it kind of accomplishes the same thing. And, I haven't spent as much time working with designers and architects in that respect. Builders tend to control our market right now quite a bit. And so I tend to use that elevator pitch with the builders trying to gain new partners.
Pat and Juan Pablo, how do you guys at Pacific Audio use the elevator pitch in your process?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Eric and JW mentioned. One thing that I do mention, and I think Eric had said it earlier, maybe it was you, Josh, had mentioned about the Michelin star, right? I like using those type of like industry certifications or way to vet things. I bring up the GIA, or the Gemology Institute of America. A lot of our clients, like you said, Eric, the high net worth, they understand that when you see GIA, they're not gonna be like, huh? Most of them are gonna understand that. And if not, if you mention Michelin star, it is our industry's way to look at integrators and quantify who these people are and what they're doing. So I use those terms, right? And that's how I kind of sell it, saying that these are 2 of the other food category and jewelry category. This is our category to vet who we are. And Juan may have some other examples as well.
Yeah, let's hear from Juan, the man with the longest name, which has not been able to speak yet.
Well, a little bit of, I think a little bit of what everybody said. We approach it here on Kauai that way. But I would say that HTA kind of backs up a lot of, having that certification backs up a lot of that elevator pitch. So we play to our strengths. So what are our strengths? Our history, our success, our reputation, and our service department, for example. And how do you evaluate that other than my word on it? Is we have this certification that is a serious process to get us there. And so it helps ensure that those strengths that we're highlighting have a backing and they're not just words. Why do we play to our strengths? And kind of similar, JW mentioned that a little bit earlier. Listen to the client, right? It's super important to hear their experience, where they're coming from and what their experience has been before with integrators. And from those integrators, you're not feature dumping your strengths, you're highlighting how you won't run into those situations because we plan ahead on that particular aspect. So whatever it is their experience has been in the past, you can narrow down to those few strengths, and that a lot of times is enough to earn their trust.
Yeah, the trust is huge, right? You know, what they're faced with in a competitive situation. There's jobs where you're the only guy, right? And you've been anointed by the builder, and this is my guy, period. This guy you're using, and great, right? But then there's those jobs where you have 2 or 3 competitors. Everyone's showing up. Everyone's reasonably charming and nice. That's our industry, right? People are nice in our industry. They're all smarter than the client about technology, so they all seem like experts. They're all showing up with their D-Tools proposal or iPoint that looks identical to the other 2 proposals, or Portal, whatever they use. And the gear seemingly seems the same, right? So you as a client are looking at this and going, 3 nice guys, seems about the same. The only criteria they have to judge you now is price, because you've all said you're the most wonderful installer in town, right? That's why it's so important to have some sort of third-party endorsement, right? We don't buy a $39 toothbrush without reading 12 reviews on Amazon about it, right? Like imagine if we're spending $100,000 or $200,000. Like we want somebody else to say, yeah, you're doing the right thing. You're not a dummy by hiring this guy. So we need to understand it. And sometimes, I get lazy and I don't bring up HTA and some sales pitches, and bad on me because I am depriving myself of a tipping point, because a lot of clients they seem to trust everybody, but they want that reassurance. They want to trust but verify, right? So they want somebody else saying, yeah, that's a good decision. The one thing I wanted to bring up before I forget is your digital presence and how important that is. A lot of us had neglected our websites. We haven't really, we've just been so busy. We haven't really paid attention to marketing much. So I would urge you all, everybody on this call today, Google yourself, Google your company, and take a look and see what a customer is seeing today. See what your Google reviews say, see what your Yelp reviews say, because those are the first things that come up, and see what other things are popping up in that page 1. The good news is you will have an HTA listing in page 1, and typically it says something nice about you in the log line before they don't have to click to read something like you're one of the top integrators in your area. But I urge everybody to get their kind of digital house in order, because it's so rapidly progressing that people don't want to talk to people. They're not asking their friends so much. They're just hopping on the internet at 11 o'clock at night, thinking about their project, researching, looking at you on the internet, stalking your Instagram, your Facebook, your Yelp reviews, your Google reviews. A typical consumer will stalk you 7 times before making a major purchase. And the good news is by the time they pick up their phone, 80% of clients have decided they're going to hire you. So once you get that call, you're in the driver's seat. So super important to get your digital house in order. Anyway, I wanted to bring that up.
Along those lines, to back up what Eric is saying, both of the companies all 3, because Eric, your DSI is an HTA certified company. You're talking about that on your website, and that's good. I know all 3 of you have some type of branding on there. So that's really important too, right? Because they're going to check your website out. And when they see what that logo is, let's just be real. We're in a pretty small industry. HTA is never going to be a household name, so let's get over that. But when they see what that logo is and they click on it and it talks about what the standard is, like JW's site has a really good page for that where they explain what the HTA standard is. So a consumer doesn't even have to go to the HTA site. They can just kind of read the Cliffs notes and go, oh, that's legit. So you just built the trust level up massively. And not all are, a good portion of HTA dealers are not taking advantage of that. It takes a couple minutes to get your website person to update it, but wow, it pays off in building that trust level up.
I'll even give a shout out to one of your sponsors that we use in One Firefly, the guy Ron Callis and his team over there. They redid our website 2-3 years ago, and recently re-updated it again so that HTA is literally the pop-up when somebody comes on, and more or less about the calculator, which I know we'll talk about here in a bit. But we really ramped ours up over the last probably 2 or 3 months with that. Yep, there you go.
There you go. That's your site right there, Pat, and it's awesome. This is a pop-up right here, HTA state, calculate your budget, and this is the embedded calculator, so we get the results from that, which is great. Highly recommend that. There's an integrator. He was going to be on today, but something came up and he couldn't. It's a dealer down in Florida, is HTA, Andres client of Maxicon. Some of you might know him. And he does something similar, has a pop-up like this. He gets so much traffic on the budget calculator. He asked us to do some Google Analytics coding for him to help figure out who these people are. So he attributes, and he only got certified last year, early 2022. And he attributed, and this is on one of our recorded webinars, so you can hear this as with his own mouth, that over $1 million of business happened in a couple of months from people kind of pre-qualifying themselves with that calculator. So let's use that as a great segue to talk about the HTA calculator, because it's one of the secret weapons that some dealers get it and they're like, it's the best thing ever, and some dealers are afraid to use it. So Eric, I'll let you moderate this part of it and how we use it.
Let me frame it. So let's talk about what the calculator is and what it's not, right? If you want an exact price on what your system would cost, that is not what this is, right? We used to make a joke at DSI amongst our sales team that we would want the client to guess what he thought his system would cost, and we'd know that whatever he thought it would cost, it was 2.5 times that number. And it was uncanny how often that was right. So clients do not understand how much things cost in our industry, and they don't know the possibilities. So the budget calculator is designed to educate your client on what the range is, like what the possibilities are. Yeah, we could use a pair of Mariners, Sony Mariners outdoors to have music by a pool, or we can use 2 landscape systems with 24 satellites and 6 subs, right? There's a wide range of possibilities in our industry, right? But what we want to do is we want to educate the client to bring them up from that low, I'm just buying some TVs and some internet, right? Up to no. It's a lot more than that. Here's all the things you need to think about for the budget, and here's the potential cost, right? So I don't have to be the one that delivers that sticker shock after they tell me everything they want, and I hand them the proposal, and then they ghost me. And I never hear from them again because it's way more than they expected it to be. So I use it as a pre-qualifier just to say, even before my first meeting, just, hey, go through this, punch in your stuff. It'll give you a range of, where we're going to be. So we can have a good conversation. We can kind of not focus on the pricing, but more focus on what you want. That's super effective. It is also super effective to weed out clients that are going to be a waste of my time. I send it to them. If they look at that and it freaks them out, then they're not my client, and that's great. I just saved myself an enormous amount of time. So, but I know everybody uses it a little bit differently, and some people have had great success with it. So, I don't know, Pat, we'll start with you. It seems to be front and center on your website, so you must be getting some good stuff out of it.
I'm gonna actually hand it off to Juan because he's been beating that thing up. So go for it, Juan.
Yeah, it's been my ally, that I have to say, especially during those bursts of proposals. You're just getting all these requests and calls, and we're trying to figure out how to address it and what format would be, would tie in with our theme and our and our look that would be something palatable to the client, that the client felt heard. Not just an email with, I felt that maybe just the email with the value would be not listening or perceived as not listening fully. And so we took that information, and what we did is we will run 3. This is depending on the project, but typically on a new build, we'll run 3 of those and then put in a nice presentation that we have a template for. And we put 3 levels. So we call it practical, robust, and performance. And we do 3 levels, and we run 3 calculators, which are fairly easy to do, and populate the numbers into the slides. adjust a little bit the imaging based on what product line we're looking for their home, and then adjust a little bit based on plan sets if we've received, and then hand something a little bit more personalized, but it doesn't take the time to do a material list or do a full proposal for them. The part that I really like about it is I'm not overshooting myself. I'm not undershooting. I might have, but might not have a deep information of who the client is, and this might uncover that a little bit, because then it opens a discussion of like, well, what does that mean? So it opens a little bit more conversations directly to the client. We've also felt that it penetrates directly to the client. A lot of times we go through several layers, and we're dealing with several layers, and the client we might not be in front of. We have all these representatives, interior designers, obviously, and builders. And this particular tool has piqued the curiosity of the client enough to say, you know what, let's have a chat, because I want to understand what those levels are. And we have a short description of them, of what the level is. And again, we adjust it based on the project. That's been really good, because then at that point, when we engage them either into a design contract, we have everybody's seen the numbers, everybody's talked about the numbers. We mentioned that they're not accurate. So from the get-go on the opening page, it says, hey, this is a budgetary estimate based, plus or minus a percentage. Depending on the project, in some projects we might be more accurate or need to be more accurate. So we narrow it down. We'll run like lighting, for example, and just to have an idea where lighting's going to be. We feel sometimes network and lighting can be off. As a matter of fact, I have some sheets where I analyze do a forensics of like, how was my HTA calculator bids against my final product? Like, what did we ended up at? And were we off? How much this and how much that? And we have those percentages there, so we can look at them and say, hey, this house is going to be similar. And we've noticed that network for this type of setup will be 30% higher. So they just add that number in our budget. And so we have a little bit more education that is particular to our market, obviously, and to the builds on Kauai. Everything has to be marine grade, right? And everything has to be a lot of outdoor areas, et cetera. So that probably changes a little bit.
Well, Pablo, I would classify you as a budget calculator ninja now.
Oh, he's big time. Yes.
J-Dub, do you have anything to add to the budget calculator story, or should we move on?
I don't want to follow that. No, ours is very simple. The use case that I have is every time I get introduced to a new client, whether it's from another client, a builder, architect, I have a canned kind of response that I send out to that client, thanking them, saying I'm looking forward to meeting them with here's my available dates. And at the end of the email, I have a paragraph that talks about HTA, has a link to the calculator if they want to do a little homework before the meeting. What I like about it is most of the time, either they'll go through, fill it out, and then I'll get an email that tells me all of that information. So I really do know what they want. Or they'll come in and say, oh, I didn't realize that you did motorized shades, or I didn't realize that you did this. I didn't realize, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was thinking about audio video. And so they'll make that comment in the meeting. So that's how we leverage the calculator, is kind of the homework before the first meeting, kind of like you said.
That's I wanted to pick up on that, JW. This is something I've noticed a lot from where I sit in the industry running this association and talking to architects, designers, and builders, which I do quite a bit. A matter of fact, I was at the IBS KBIS show last week in Las Vegas. There was over 120,000 builders and designers. So I got on a lot of them, got to speak. And again, kind of go what JW just said, a lot of them think of you as the AV guy and not realizing the whole scope of things you do. So I want to share a really important tool that should not be new to you, but I want you to see it again and maybe look at this in a new light. This is the project technology assessment form, which has been shared in multiple of our newsletters in the past. Use this with your designers and your builders and your architects. It was made for them. It's a menu. This is the version that is actually for the builder. The version for you has all the same questions, but it has a little different wording on the top. This is big. The builders, designers, architects love this. It's gone viral with many of them, where they're sharing it with others, and it's designed to be a menu. It's designed to give to them and have, they have it with them. So when they're talking to their client, they don't forget all the things that you do. And another side benefit of this is that knowing that you do all of these systems makes it easier for them, because it's easier for them to deal with one company to handle the shades, the lighting, the controls, the security, the networking, than what they might be thinking, which is different subcontractors for all these. So this is your friend, and it has a link right to the budget calculator in it as well. So this is your friend as a tool to share with them. And along the lines of tying this into architects, designers, and builders, getting this out. And your last, this is on this URL here, which I'll share in the chat. You'll have noticed from our last 3 newsletters, we're giving you our top interior designer, architect, and builder tips, marketing tips. This is crowdsourced from a lot of smart people. So if you want to shortcut the time it takes to go out there and use time and build relationships with these folks, look at these tips. It'll save you a lot of time and a lot of bumping your head on the wall. Do these tips. I'll share this link. So I just wanted to let you know some of these other tools available to you.
Josh, can you pull up articles?
Yep, we'll do that right now.
Okay, so the other kind of tool that most people sort of neglect and don't use is the articles. So we've all been faced with, oh, I don't need to wire my house, everything's wireless, right? Or, oh, I don't need a great network, I get one of those Eros off Amazon, or why can't I use Ring cameras? Why do I need Verkada, right? So we all need some help in the sales department to get clients to move into higher performance products, right? We want to give them reasons, and we want it to be a third party saying this, and we want to back you up in terms of your sales efforts. So that's one of my favorite ones. What's the life expectancy of your electronics, right? You go to a client you did a system 6 years old. They think it should be like I don't know what, like last 25 years. Then you got to explain to them, like, no, this is like more like your phone than your pool. You got to replace this stuff. So there's an article helping you have the client understand when things need to be replaced. So bottom line is, every sales objection you have gotten on a product category or whatever, we have tried to create an article that reinforces your position to help your clients make good decisions and do it right the first time. So, I'd love to send these over to clients, send them a link to whatever article is appropriate. But we try to cover all subjects. And if there's some subject on there that we aren't helping you out with, let us know. We'll get an article up there for you. I don't know if you guys use these articles at all, because most people don't, but I wanted to point it out to everybody that they're there. Josh, what's our next thing what's our other rarely used HTA resource?
Well, this is I don't have a stat on if it's rarely used or not. I know some dealers are, but I want to share this because it's easy. It's been pre-made for you, and this is the proposal insert. So again, the theme that we've been talking about here is you definitely want to talk about the fact that you are HTA certified, because if you don't, what's the point, right? You got to let them know. And you've heard great feedback from yourself and JW and Pat and Juan, Pablo, that when you mention this, you're giving, you're elevating yourself, the Michelin stars for our industry. Clients will get that. Back that up, because they might forget that. So these are we call these the proposal inserts. I'll blow it up a little bit, but we've made these customized for each. This is the one here for JW. There's integrated home logos on it. And we have a full page version. It's a PDF. So this one PDF, we give it to you in 3 flavors: full page, a half page, or a quarter page, depending on the layout of your proposal. All you are different. That's why we kind of give you 3 flavors of the same thing. And this is a silent salesperson. Use it, stick it in there, and make sure that you are using your HTA logo, which you all have access to, on your design and engineering documents, on your proposals. A lot of you use it on your email signature, which is great. You said the elevator pitch early on, they might forget. And now you're re-emphasizing, you're like, oh yeah, that was pretty important. Oh yes, you keep narrowing down that field of potential bidders and getting the other bids disqualified. I know JW, I think you kind of mentioned this earlier, a story that you mentioned to me a couple of years ago, that you were in a competitive bid situation and they did entertain bids from non-HTA dealers, but you were the more expensive one, and they hired you in the end and told you, why weren't those other companies HTA certified? Kind of rhetorically, like, why weren't they certified? I mean, that's the right question that the homeowner asked back, kind of rhetorically, like, you meet the standard, it makes common sense. I didn't feel as easy hiring that. I didn't want to hire those other companies, even though you're more money, because it's more of a gamble. These proposal inserts and all that, all are emphasizing that fact. So that's just another key tool available to you to use.
Josh, so we're coming up to the end of the time, but I wanted you to just go over design partner for a little bit.
Yeah, this is big. We have about, like I said at the outset, about 55% of HTA dealers are opted in right now. So going back, I speak to a lot of architects, designers, and builders myself. As leading HTA, I'm talking to the trade association that represent these other folks and finding out, why are they not bringing you to their projects at the very, very get-go? And it's for a couple of reasons. Some of them, they don't know what you do. So we're trying to work on that as HTA, but you're the boots on the ground in your own market. So you've heard us again talking about go out and meet designers and architects and builders in your community, because you'll be shocked how many don't know that this industry even exists, that there's one place they could go to get all this technology. So that's step one. But like Eric was saying earlier in his pitch, every single client, especially in the luxury side, is just about everybody has had a negative technology experience out there, that they've been burned in the past. So when we're talking to an architect, design, and builder, and this is what I love as HTA, when I'm talking to a room full of designers, architects, builders, and I ask, if you had a bad experience with our industry, and all the hands go up, and I'll say, that's why our association exists. If our industry were so great, the Home Technology Association would have zero need for existence. But the fact is, we were needed because less than 10% of this industry is worth your while. Then our eyebrow goes up. Then I share with like literally on the PowerPoint, I share the HTA, all the things that we do, what the standard is, and the checks that we do, and the arguments stop. We're like, okay, that's fair. I didn't know professionals at this level existed. So we've taken that a step further and said, wow. Oh, and the other things that we hear back is, what things did integrators do that created a problem on the job? And a lot of it is the thing that the worst 90% of this industry do. Argue in front of the client with the architect, designer, and builder in the room, like dumb things. So what we did is codify a rules of engagement that just about every single HTA dealer is already doing. So this is not a big push. And what we've done is I, in the association, we went to architects, designers, and builders and say, if we had integrators that work this way, this is the HTA design partner, these 11 rules of engagement, they collaborate, they work with you early, work with you early, they'll always respect you. If there's a disagreement, it's going to be behind or not with the client in the room. They're going to not push product. They're not going to go there with this agenda, because that's the other thing that they hate about our industry. It's like you're pushing an agenda, the client's saying no, and they're still trying to sell something the client's not interested in. We addressed that in this HTA design partner. When we said, if we give you integrators that act like this, would you hire them in your projects at the very beginning? And they said, absolutely. So we hit on something. So we flipped the table on them a little bit and said, great, well, we're going to have, we were working on this for months. So we're telling them we're going to have HTA design partners soon listed on our website. But here's what we need out of you, because there's certain things that architects, designers, and builders are doing that are hindering the integrator to do their job well. Step one is you're not bringing them in early enough. So would you do these 5 things that they can opt into? And if they do, they're going to be considered an HTA technology partner. So we have the yin and the yang. It's a relationship. It's a rules of engagement. So you both know how to work the best way with each other. And the winner is everybody. I mean, everyone's going to win this way, because You'll be in there early. You'll be able to do your best amount of work. You're going to be in there. We're telling the architects at schematic design phase. So things like space planning and theater sizing and such, they should be relying on you. So we launched the HTA Design Partner last month, and we're working on a website refresh. And when we get that done, we're going to launch the trade partner facing side of this to the architect, designer, and builder kind of more then. It's soft launch now, but it's going to be launched with fanfare in a few months. And that way architects, designers, and builders could opt in, and we give them a logo. It's like an inverse of color of the HTA Design Partner logo, so that they're designed to go together really well. It's a big thing, and it's a reason to pick up the phone. And maybe with your existing relationships that know you and love you, maybe it's not the biggest thing, but as you go out there and you're building new relationships with architects, designers, and builders, and want to show that you are a team player and somebody worthy to work with, this will shorten that time it takes to build trust, massively shorten that time, and get you on the projects early. So it's a really big thing. On the topic of something that was talked about earlier, talking about our trade partners, Eric was brought to that huge project because it said on the plans must be HTA certified. And in JW's market, which isn't as competitive as LA, he has a little different approach. If you're in a crowded market, which LA is one of them, Texas, Florida, New York, there's some of those population centers where you've got a lot of crummy competition that are really aggressive. Some integrators are aggressively marketing to them, and you have this builder and architect designer that loves you, that trusts you, and let them know that you're certified. You don't need to sell them anymore that you're great. They already know you're great. But what you're doing is you're giving them ammunition to do what some builders and architects, designers are doing, is they're defending the relationship by saying, I only work with HTA certified people, like Eric did with that one builder. And that's defensible to a client, because in the past, I could tell you from my marketing, I would work really hard to build a relationship. And if some low baller came in at the 11th hour to kind of ruin my proposal, the builder would only dig in so far, because then it looked like they were on the take and they didn't want to create an unusual or an uncomfortable situation with the client. But they will dig in if there's some standard that they can point to. And there's a question that popped up here. How do we find the proposal insert is coming up? If you are an HTA certified dealer, once you email Jeff.Cassetti, you can go to the webinar chat and see Jeff's email, and he'll point to you where that is, because these are all custom made. They sit on a folder somewhere and he can send it to you. Or email me, jc@htacertified.org, and we'll get you that certificate, something we use. But we used our time. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing these things. And we're 2023. It's weird economic times. There could be another banner year. Lean on the tools more than ever, and you will find your sales close ratio goes up, trust level goes up, and keep recommending you build those really great new trade partner relationships with designers and builders and architects. Thank you, everybody.